It's a common refrain for people on the left to be outraged about the rhetoric of their opponents. For them to accuse people on the right of spouting or fomenting hate, while believing that they epitomise compassion and tolerance. Here's a particularly good example of that phenomenon from Westminster. And it's worth noting the spittle-flecked fury with which this MP delivers her diatribe.
Speaker, I genuinely do not seek to stifle robust debate, but this evening the Prime Minister has continually used pejorative language to describe an Act of Parliament passed by this House. And I'm sure that you would agree, Mr Speaker, that we should not resort to using offensive, dangerous or inflammatory language for legislation that we do not like. And we stand here, Mr Speaker, under the shield of our departed friend, with many of us in this place subject to death threats and abuse every single day. And let me tell the Prime Minister that they often quote his words: surrender act, betrayal, traitor, and I for one am sick of it. We must moderate our language, and it has to come from the Prime Minister first. So I would be interested in hearing his opinion. He should be absolutely ashamed of himself.
I think, Mr. Speaker, I have to say, Mr. Speaker, I have to say, Mr. Speaker, I've never heard such humbug in all my life. Because the reality is, this is a bill.
What's particularly telling about that clip is the rage that explodes when Boris Johnson uses the word humbug. But for all their posturing, I think we'll find that the left are frequently guilty of far worse abuse themselves, and that it has much more damaging consequences. This is hardly a new phenomenon. Nye Bevan, considered the heart and soul of Clement Attlee's Labour government of the 1940s, famously declared that nothing can eradicate from my heart a deep and burning hatred for the Tory party. So far as I am concerned, they are lower than vermin. But when it comes to their own side, they don't condemn that kind of talk at all. In fact, they celebrate it, even going so far as to plaster it all over T-shirts, tops which then get glowing reviews in The Guardian. But try to imagine that that quote referred to Jews, or Muslims, or immigrants. How would the left react then? They praise actions in themselves that would have them calling for the police if committed by anyone else. Because it's not just that such vitriolic bigotry is so common on the left. It's that they have such pride in their prejudice. And this results in continual abuse and wild inconsistency. I made another film a while back, and it highlighted Owen Jones's horror that some of his colleagues had been called Nazis, even as he continually abused all of his political rivals as fascists, virtually spitting the words out of his mouth with disgust. Charlie Brooker, the left-wing journalist, would be appalled at any abuse or prejudice that came from the right. Yet he also sneered that I've instinctively hated the Tories since birth. The Conservative Party is an eternally irritating force for wrong that appeals exclusively to bigots, toffs, money-minded machine men, faded entertainers, and selfish, grasping simpletons who were born with some essential part of their soul missing. The fact is that while the rhetoric of the right frequently has to be twisted and misrepresented to inflame the passions of the left, their own hatred is naked, blunt, open, and undeniable. Try to imagine a Tory MP vocalising any of the following opinions. Laura Pidcock, a young Labour backbencher, bragged how her loathing of the Tories was visceral. She was promptly rewarded with a position in the shadow cabinet. Emma Dent Code called Sean Bailey a scumbag and a lowlife, before going online to post an image of the Tory logo with a hangman's noose scribbled across it. Paolo Gabaldo, speaking at a Momentum conference, yelled, "Let's be visceral. Let's hate." An invocation that prompted Ash Sarkar to eagerly volunteer to join Team Hate. And this poison goes right to the top of the Labour Party. The Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell, in reference to Esther McVeigh, laughed and joked how he'd like to lynch the bitch. The Deputy Leader, Angela Rayner, went on an even more deranged rant. To thunderous applause, she called the Tories a bunch of scum, homophobic, racist, misogynistic, absolute pile of Banana Republic Etonian piece of scum. And you can be sure that if a Tory had used the phrase Banana Republic, then Labour would have screamed that they were racist. The direct result of Rayner's inflammatory rhetoric was that a left-wing mob attacked the former Tory leader Ian Duncan Smith in the street, thwacking him on the head with a heavy-duty parking cone while screaming that he was Tory scum. You can be sure that if a Labour MP had been attacked by a right-wing mob, they would have howled in outrage. But hypocrisy appears as natural to the far left as oxygen, so they all had a good old laugh about it instead. And this is why the left commit genocide after genocide. Because their own violence is always a source of pride, never shame. And because their own incipient bigotry persuades them that it's justified. And because the moderates never condemn the radical lunatics who pollute their movement in such vast numbers. Because while numerous voices screamed support, others were notable by their silence. Owen Jones has been attacked in the street too, and when he was, the right largely spoke up to offer sympathy and support. But Jones, who was also in Manchester when the attack happened, had nothing to say, though he did find time to call for the abolition of the Metropolitan Police. Yeah. This sort of violence, inflamed by the continual hatred of the left, is on the rise. In April 2019, Carla Hales, a frail middle-aged woman, was out campaigning in Colchester when a burly man rushed her and punched her 3 times in the stomach while screaming that she was a Tory bitch. Just weeks later, the home of Graham Campbell, a Tory councillor in Lanarkshire, was petrol-bombed while his family slept inside. Michael Gove received numerous messages, like the one that declared all Tories should die a horrible, painful death because you're all vermin. It really is only a matter of time before some nutter kills a Tory MP, and John McDonnell and Angela Rayner will shrug their shoulders and declare it's nothing to do with them. At the Tory conference in Manchester, Jacob Rees-Mogg was abused too, something that's happened numerous times. And other protesters issued a chilling warning. They lofted a sign declaring, "Remember, we only have to be lucky once." A direct quote from the IRA that referred to their bombing of the Grand Hotel in Brighton. An attack that killed 5 Tory MPs, injured many more, and missed Margaret Thatcher by a whisker. And the left will still tell you that they're the nice ones, and that the Tories are the nasty party. But the evidence suggests otherwise. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And if you're interested in these topics, I've written 2 books which go into them in extensive detail. They're called The Tyranny of the Left, and they're available on the links below. Please feel free to pick them up and let me know what you think. Thank you.